What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, I'm going to give my review of Snowfall Season 1, Episode 2, titled Make Them Birds Fly. Alright, so Snowfall Episode 2, Make Them Birds Fly. It was another good episode. It was better than the first one, I thought. And the thing that made it better is now they've started to show you how these three stories are going to weave together, right? So I kind of knew where they were going from the first episode, but many people I spoke to, even stuff I saw online, people were a little unsure how all this fit together. They felt the first episode was a little too convoluted in the storytelling. But now we start to see how the CIA connects with Franklin and how it all connects back with the cartels and everything. So now it should give more of the fans an easier through line to kind of connect everything, even though they're not directly connected, right? We're going to start connecting it through some of the side characters and some of the actual plot lines that are going through without them being directly connected. Is how I feel like they're going to continue to go with the storytelling. Just connected here and there with the side characters and not necessarily our three leads, Franklin, Teddy, and Gustavo. Alright, so the synopsis for this episode reads, Franklin continues his courier work for Avi. Teddy's first encounter with Avi is not quite as expected. And Gustavo learns who he stole from and wound up killing in the home invasion. So let's start with Franklin. So Franklin continues his courier work for Avi. So basically, Franklin flipped that first key, comes back to Avi, with the cash, and now wants another one. So he has to do some errands for Avi, whatever, and then Avi ends up giving it to him. But then when Franklin goes to flip it to the same lady he flipped it to in the first episode, her name escapes me right now, it doesn't work out so good because she turns him down, says it's not really what she does. She took the first one and that was that. And then as he's leaving, there's these dudes that run up on him. They beat him, they rob him, they take his new motorcycle that he bought earlier in the episode. And he's out of luck now because now he's got to go back to Avi saying he don't have the money or the product. And that's definitely not going to go good for Franklin. But in this episode, it was really about Franklin trying to step up on his own, He goes and gets the bike, but then he hides it from his mom. You know what I mean? He basically works hard and fights a little and argues a little to get Avi to give him the more keys, takes on an extra job that he would, wouldn't have normally done to get the extra, another order on consignment from Avi. And, and then ultimately proves that he's not man enough for it. So you kind of get this parallel of seeing Franklin trying to be grown up and move out and be on his own, And then you see that flip side of it, of him still kind of being a kid and not thinking the right way or an adult way in handling his business. So you see that coming to bite him back in his butt. And seeing as how this is only the second episode, I'm sure he's going to learn from this and step his game up. Like I said, Franklin seems to be very loosely, but based loosely on Freeway Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, the real gangster. Look him up if you don't know who he is. What I know of his story, it's just ringing a lot to me in the character Franklin. So we'll see how that plays out. And let's move on now, because that was really all we got with Franklin. It was a lot with a little bit, you know what I mean? And then we get Teddy's first encounter with Avi. So now Teddy demands that he meets the Connect, the guy that they're moving the product with and all that. They're supplying Avi with the product. So they go to him, and Avi is untrustworthy at first. He makes them strip. He questions whether or not they're loyal or whether or not they're informants, whatever. And it's a really tense scene with Teddy, and then I forget his partner's name, the Spanish dude, and Avi. It's very tense, and it plays out much like you'd expect it, being very tense, where you think something terrible might happen, and it very well could happen, but you kind of know it's ultimately not going to happen because we're dealing with one of the main characters here, right? So yeah, I mean, that played out in an interesting way, just to see the dynamic of how this CIA officer, right? This CIA operative, this, high secretive government organization is like basically being punked by this gangster, by this drug lord, this drug kingpin. And I just love that. Like, it's just awesome to see that, because the parallels and the struggle and power and all that, it's just interesting to me. And it's very real life, all right, so, and then finally we have Gustavo learns who he stole from. So now, he finds out that it's this, all high-level cartel stuff, and he killed a high-ranking family member of these cartel people that he's working for. It wasn't really his fault the way it went down, but the way it looks like is that he can't handle his business, and that he's maybe not the go-to guy for this. But this ends up sucking him in deeper into the whole cartel and the drug business. So I'm sure as this season progresses, we're going to see all three main characters in Franklin, Teddy, and Gustavo all get sucked deeper and deeper into this drug game. And I'm sure it's not going to end up good for everybody involved, or maybe not even anybody involved. But I'm sure we'll see plenty of highs before we get to those lows, you know what I mean? So, I mean, this was a solid episode. There's not a lot to talk about yet, because we're only 2 episodes in. And, you don't want to start talking about the actual history of it before this stuff starts to unfold, because then you're kind of spoiling it for anybody who's not going to look into that, or who's not already familiar with the actual history behind it. So as the stuff unfolds, I'll start to maybe talk a little bit more about the truth, the true story behind it all, because this is a fictionalized version of those events. So that should be fun to kind of pick that apart and stuff. So, yep, that's it for this one. Sound off down below. Let me know what you thought about the second episode of Snowfall, or the first episode. Just what you think about the series so far. Anything you want to discuss down there relating to the show, or, the history behind it, whatever. Definitely sound off down below. I know there isn't tons to talk about yet, but like I said, I'm sure there'll be more and more to talk about as we go. If you guys have any ideas for any topics related to Snowfall that you want me to do videos on, or questions you have, or anything at all, drop it down there, because, that'll help me come up with a little bit more stuff other than the usual review discussion for Snowfall. But yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Always appreciate it. You guys have a fantastic day, night. And I will see you next time. It's day somewhere, it's night somewhere, right? Have a good one.